The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Ambassador Veltar walked slowly across the polished floor, his crystal-like skin catching the light from 1,000 different suns that streamed through the dome above. His forearms carried data tablets filled with reports that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about safety and peace. 200 years had passed since the humans disappeared. Most species barely remembered them now. The tall, two-legged creatures with their soft skin and strange habits had been just another member of the great galactic community. They had colonies on dozens of worlds, trade ships that moved between the stars, and diplomats who spoke in the council chambers. Then one day, they were simply gone. Their colonies stood empty. Their ships vanished from the space lanes. Their ambassadors never returned to the council meetings. Some species thought they had destroyed themselves in a war. Others believed they had found a new home far away and decided to stay there. Most stopped thinking about humans at all, but now something much worse than missing humans was happening in the galaxy. Veltar reached the center of the great chamber where hundreds of alien delegates waited in their floating chairs and breathing pods. The chamber was designed to hold representatives from every known species in the galaxy. There were the tall, thin Zephyrians with their blue skin and large eyes. The massive, rock-like granites who spoke in voices that sounded like grinding stone. The floating energy beings called luminals who appeared as balls of colored light. And dozens of other species that had lived together in peace for over 1,000 years. Fellow council members, Veltar began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices that let every species understand each other. I bring news from the outer rim of our galaxy. News that threatens us all. A nervous silence filled the chamber. Bad news from the outer rim usually meant pirates or trade disputes. Nothing that the combined fleets of the galaxy could not handle easily. The Kepler sector has been destroyed, Veltar continued. Not conquered, not damaged, completely destroyed. 17 inhabited worlds, with billions of lives, gone. The silence broke as delegates began talking at once. Their voices rose in dozens of different languages, creating a storm of sound that the translation systems could barely handle. High Counselor Thrinak, the oldest member of the council, raised his scaled hand for quiet. "Explain what you mean by destroyed," Thrinak said in his deep, careful voice. Veltar activated a holographic display that filled the air above the council floor. It showed a map of the Kepler sector as it had been just months ago. Green dots marked inhabited planets. Blue lines showed trade routes. Yellow markers indicated space stations and mining operations. It looked like any other successful sector of galactic civilization. Then the display changed. The green dots vanished. The blue lines disappeared. The yellow markers were gone. Even the stars themselves looked different, smaller and dimmer than before. This is the Kepler sector, as it exists today, Veltar said quietly. Whatever did this did not just destroy the planets and the people living on them. It consumed the actual matter that made up those worlds. It converted entire planets into pure energy and took that energy somewhere else. The chamber erupted, in shocked voices again. Several delegates demanded to know how such a thing was possible. Others insisted that the readings must be wrong. A few began calling for their fleets to be readied for war. "What enemy has such power?" asked Ambassador Crix, speaking for the militant warrior caste species. "What weapons can consume entire star systems?" "We do not know," Veltar admitted. "Our deep space sensors detected massive ships unlike anything in our databases. They appeared at the edge of the sector, moved through it systematically, and then vanished toward the galactic rim. Every fleet we sent to investigate was destroyed instantly. Not defeated in battle. Simply ... erased." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The Galactic Council controlled fleets with millions of ships. Their technology was the result of thousands of years of advancement and cooperation between hundreds of species. The idea that something could simply erase their most powerful vessels was almost impossible to accept. "We need information," Thranak declared. "Search all databases, military records, historical archives, anything that might tell us what we are facing." "I have already begun that search," said Dr. Zashara, a young Zephyrian scientist who rarely spoke in council meetings. "There are references in some very old texts to something called devourers that once threatened the galaxy in ancient times. But those records are incomplete and mostly dismissed as legends." "What about human archives?" suggested another delegate. "They kept detailed military records." Ambassador Crix made a dismissive gesture with his tentacles. The humans were a minor species. They had small fleets and simple weapons. What could they possibly know about threats of this magnitude? High above the council chamber, hidden in the shadows of the Great Dome, a device no larger than a human hand recorded every word of the conversation. It had been waiting there for exactly 200 years, programmed to activate only when certain keywords were spoken in the council chambers. Words like devourers and galactic rim, an ancient threat. The device finished its recording and transmitted the data instantaneously across space using technology that no council species possessed. The transmission traveled faster than light through dimensions that most galactic civilizations did not even know existed. It reached its destination in less than a second, arriving at a massive space station hidden in the dark void between galaxies. In that station, Admiral Park Ji-woo received the transmission and smiled grimly. After 2 centuries of preparation, the wait was finally over. Humanity was about to return to a galaxy that had forgotten they ever existed. Dr. Zashara floated through the abandoned corridors of Research Station Olympus, her breathing apparatus working hard in the thin atmosphere that remained after 2 centuries of neglect. The station drifted silently in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a forgotten piece of human civilization that most species assumed was just another piece of space junk. Her blue fingers traced along the walls, searching for access panels that might still have power. The Zephyrian Council had sent her here as punishment for asking too many questions about the missing humans. They thought she was wasting time on dead history when she should be helping fight the Devourers. But Zashara believed that understanding the past was the key to surviving the future. A faint blue glow caught her attention. Hidden behind a loose panel, she found a data core that still had emergency power. Her heart raced as she connected her portable equipment to the ancient human systems. Most alien technology was incompatible with human designs, but the Zephyrians had always been good at making different systems work together. The holographic displays flickered to life, casting strange shadows in the empty room. Text began scrolling across the screens in the human language that few aliens bothered to learn anymore. Zashara had spent years studying human records, fascinated by their unusual approach to problem-solving. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. These were not the records of a species running away in fear. The files were marked with words like strategic withdrawal and long-term defense initiative and Project Exodus. She opened the first file and began to read. Personal log, Admiral Kim Dae-ho, commanding officer of the Human Deep Space Defense Force. The recorded voice began. Today marks the beginning of the most difficult decision in human history. Long-range sensors have confirmed the approach of what our ancient texts call the Devourers. Based on their current speed and trajectory, they will reach the inner galaxy in approximately 200 years. Zashara leaned closer to the display. The humans had known about the Devourers 2 centuries ago. How was that possible when the Galactic Council had only detected them months ago? The recording continued. The Council species are not ready for this threat. Their military thinking is based on conventional warfare between similar technologies. The Devourers represent something entirely different. Something that requires a completely new approach to survival. More files opened automatically as the ancient systems recognized her interest. Battle plans, resource assessments, population counts, and most shocking of all, detailed intelligence reports about devourer capabilities that were far more complete than anything the current Galactic Council possessed. "We have decided to withdraw from galactic civilization," Admiral Kim's voice explained. "This decision will be seen as cowardice or abandonment by the other species. They will not understand that sometimes you must appear to run away in order to prepare for a fight that has not yet begun." Zashara found herself reading faster and faster as the scope of the human plan became clear. They had not simply disappeared. They had relocated their entire civilization to hidden locations in the dark spaces between galaxies, taking with them detailed plans for weapons and strategies specifically designed to fight an enemy that consumed matter itself. Meanwhile, in the Centauri system, the proud defense fleet was learning exactly what the humans had known 2 centuries earlier. Admiral Vexen watched in horror as 3,000 of his finest ships were reduced to elementary particles in less than an hour. The Devourer vessels moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting and changing as they converted the matter of destroyed ships into more of themselves. "All ships retreat," Vexen ordered, but there was nowhere to run. The Devourers moved faster than anything in the galactic fleet. They seemed to anticipate every tactical move before it was made. The few ships that escaped brought terrifying news back to the Council. The enemy was not just destroying fleets and planets. It was learning from each encounter, adapting its tactics, becoming more efficient at the task of consuming entire civilizations. Back on the research station, Zashara discovered files that made her hands shake as she read them. The humans had not just predicted the Devourer arrival. They had been fighting small groups of these creatures for decades in the dark void beyond the galaxy, learning their weaknesses, developing countermeasures. Phase 1 complete, she read from a file dated just 50 years ago. Devourer scout groups neutralized using kinetic bombardment techniques. Phase 2 preparations on schedule. Void colonies now capable of supporting full military production. Phase 3 weapons testing will begin next cycle. A new transmission interrupted her reading. It was a general alert from the Galactic Council, calling all available ships to defend the core worlds. The Devourers had finished with the outer rim and were now moving toward the heart of galactic civilization. Entire sectors were going dark as the enemy consumed everything in its path. Zashara copied as much data as she could carry and prepared to leave the station. But as she reached the docking bay, she noticed something that made her stop. New energy signatures were appearing on her sensors. Ships were decloaking throughout the solar system, dozens of them, then hundreds. They were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Massive, heavily armored vessels with designs that emphasized function over beauty. Ships built for war by a species that had spent 200 years preparing for this exact moment. As she watched, a transmission came through on frequencies that had been silent for 2 centuries. It was in the human language, but her translator handled it easily. "This is Admiral Park Ji-woo of the Human Deep Space Defense Force," the voice said calmly. "We have monitored Council communications regarding the Devourer threat. Humanity is returning to assist in the defense of galactic civilization. Prepare to receive our representatives." Zashara smiled for the first time in months. The humans had not abandoned the galaxy after all. They had simply gone away to become what the galaxy would need when its darkest hour arrived. The bridge of Council flagship Unity's Hope fell completely silent as the massive human ship materialized directly in front of them. Nobody had seen it approaching. Their most advanced sensors had detected nothing until the vessel simply appeared. Its dark hull, filling their view screen like a moving mountain dot. Captain Vexera of the Aquilon Navy had commanded ships for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The human vessel was over a kilometer long, built from metals that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange weapons jutted from its hull at odd angles, and scorch marks covered its armor plating like battle scars. This was not the sleek, elegant ship design that humans were known for 2 centuries ago. Incoming transmission, reported his communications officer, her voice barely above a whisper. On screen, Vexera ordered. The view screen changed to show the interior of the human ship's bridge. What they saw made several crew members gasp in shock. The bridge was nothing like the comfortable, well-lit spaces favored by Council species. It was dark, utilitarian, filled with displays showing tactical information and weapon status. And standing in the center was a human who looked nothing like the soft, peaceful diplomats from the history books. Admiral Park Ji-woo was tall and lean, his face marked by lines that spoke of years spent in harsh conditions. His uniform was plain black with no decorations except for a simple rank insignia. His eyes were the most unsettling thing about him. They were calm and calculating, like someone who had seen terrible things and learned to accept them. Captain Nexera, Ji-woo said, his voice carrying easily across the communication channel. I am Admiral Park Ji-woo, commanding the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress signals regarding the Devourer invasion, Admiral Nexera replied, trying to keep his voice steady. We had no idea humans still existed. Your people disappeared 200 years ago without explanation. We did not disappear, Ji-woo corrected gently. We relocated. There is a difference. Behind the Admiral, Vexera could see other humans working at their stations. They moved with quiet efficiency, speaking to each other in short clipped sentences. Everything about them suggested a military force that had been at war for a very long time. Where did you go? Vexera asked. The Council searched for your people for decades. We went to the void between galaxies, Ji-woo answered. Places where there are no stars, no planets, no resources that other species would want. We built our colonies in the cold and dark, far from anyone who might interfere with our preparations. Preparations for what? Ji-woo's expression did not change. For this moment. For the return of the Devourers. Before Vexera could ask more questions, his sensor officer called out in alarm. Captain, ships are decloaking throughout the system. The view screen switched to a tactical display that made everyone on the bridge stare in amazement. Human ships were appearing everywhere, not dozens, but hundreds of them. They came in sizes from small patrol craft to massive vessels, even larger than GIU's flagship. All of them shared the same dark, battle-scarred appearance that spoke of constant warfare. How many ships do you have? Vexera whispered. Enough. Ji-woo replied simply. At that moment, High Counselor Threnak's voice came through the emergency communication channel. All Council vessels. This is urgent. Devourer fleets have been detected approaching the Vega system. All available ships move to intercept immediately. Vexera looked at the human admiral. Will you help us? Ji-woo nodded once. That is why we are here. But understand this, Captain, if you want our help, you will follow our orders. We have been fighting the Devourers for 50 years. We know how they think, how they move, how they can be defeated. Your people do not. What do you mean you have been fighting them for 50 years? Vexera demanded. They only appeared at our borders months ago. The Devourers you are facing now are their main force, Ji-woo explained. But they always send scout groups ahead to test the defenses of their targets. We have been hunting and destroying those scout groups in the void, learning their weaknesses, developing the weapons and tactics needed to stop them. The human admiral gestured to someone off-screen, and the tactical display changed to show detailed information about Devourer's ship designs, weapon capabilities, and tactical patterns. The amount of intelligence was staggering, far more than the Council had managed to gather in months of desperate fighting. Your energy weapons are useless against them, Ji-woo continued. They absorb energy and convert it to strengthen themselves. Your shields cannot stop their matter conversion beams. Your ships are too slow to escape when they begin their feeding process. Then how do we fight them? Vexera asked. With weapons that they cannot absorb, Ji-woo said. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Nuclear Warheads that create physical explosions rather than energy discharges. Most importantly, with tactics that accept losses in order to achieve victory. The last statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Council military doctrine had always emphasized preserving lives and minimizing casualties. The idea of accepting losses went against everything they believed about civilized warfare. I understand this is difficult for your people to accept, Ji-woo said, his voice becoming slightly gentler. But the Devourers are not a conventional enemy. They do not negotiate, they do not retreat, and they do not show mercy. They will consume every living thing in this galaxy unless we stop them. And stopping them will require sacrifices. As if to emphasize his point, reports began coming in from the Vega system. The Devourer attack had begun, and the first wave of Council defenders was already being destroyed. Admiral Park Ji-woo looked directly at Captain Nexera through the view screen. The question now is simple, Captain. Do you want to live under our command, or die under your own? General Lee So-young stood at the center of the massive holographic display that filled the war room aboard the human command ship Iron Resolve. Around her, dozens of alien fleet commanders floated in their specialized chairs and breathing units, their faces showing mixtures of confusion, fear, and anger as they stared at the tactical information she was presenting. The hologram showed the entire galaxy, with red zones marking areas already consumed by the Devourers, yellow zones showing sectors under immediate threat, and small green areas representing what remained of free space. But most shocking of all were the blue arrows that showed General Lee's plan for the defense of galactic civilization. You are asking us to abandon everything, said Admiral Crix, his tentacles writhing with agitation. 1,000 years of civilization, countless worlds, trillions of lives. I am asking you to save those lives, Lee replied calmly, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. The core worlds cannot be defended with conventional tactics. The Devourers are too strong, too numerous, and they learn from every battle. Every ship you lose makes them stronger. She gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on a sector map showing the evacuation routes. These are the designated safe zones beyond the galactic rim. We have been preparing them for 200 years. They can support your populations while we deal with the Devourer threat. And how exactly do you plan to deal with an enemy that has consumed half the galaxy? Demanded Fleet Admiral Vexen. Still bitter from losing his entire command in the Centauri disaster, Captain Choi. Minho stepped forward from his position at the tactical station. His uniform was even plainer than the general's, but the other humans treated him with obvious respect. We have been studying the Devourers for 50 years, he said. They are not invincible. They have patterns, weaknesses, and most importantly, they have a single point of failure. The hologram changed again, showing detailed scans of Devourer. Ships that made the alien commanders leaned forward in their seats. The level of detail was incredible. Internal structures, power distribution networks, even what appeared to be biological components mixed with mechanical ones. The Devourers are not purely artificial, Choi continued. They are a fusion of organic and mechanical systems controlled by a central intelligence network. Destroy the network, and the individual ships become nothing more than metal and flesh, floating in space. Where is this network? Asked Counselor Threnak. That information has cost us many ships and many lives to obtain, General Lee said. The central network is located in what you call the Void Zone, a region of dark matter and collapsed stars at the galactic core. It has been hidden there for millions of years, sending out its harvesting fleets when galactic civilizations reach a certain level of development. The alien commanders exchanged worried glances. The Void Zone was considered impossible to navigate, filled with gravitational anomalies and radiation levels that would destroy any known ship. Your plan is suicide, Admiral Vexen declared. No ship can survive passage through the Void Zone. General Lee smiled grimly. No council ship can survive it. But we have not been building council ships. She gestured again, and the hologram displayed the true scope of human preparations. Hidden shipyards scattered throughout the dark void between galaxies. Manufacturing facilities built inside rogue planets that drifted in the empty spaces where no one would think to look. And most impressive of all, a fleet of vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human warships were massive, ugly things built for a single purpose. They had no crew quarters designed for comfort, no diplomatic facilities, no research laboratories. Every square meter was dedicated to weapons, armor, or the specialized equipment needed to navigate impossible conditions. 10,000 ships, Lee announced. Built over 2 centuries, using resources harvested from dead systems and rogue asteroids. Each one designed to be expendable, crewed by volunteers who understand they may not return. Lieutenant Commander Park Hyjin, monitoring from the communications station, watched the alien faces as they absorbed this information. She had been born in the Void colonies, raised on stories of the coming war, trained from childhood to serve in humanity's return to the galaxy. For her generation, this moment was not a tragedy, but a purpose. The evacuation begins immediately, General Lee continued. Council fleets will escort civilian populations to the safe zones, while human forces engage the Devourers directly. We will use hit-and-run tactics to slow their advance and gather intelligence about their command structure. Hit-and-run tactics? Admiral Crix questioned. You mean you will attack and then retreat? I mean we will attack and be destroyed, Lee corrected matter-of-factly. But each attack will serve a purpose. Each destroyed ship will transmit data about Devourer responses. Each sacrifice will bring us closer to understanding how to reach their central network. The alien commanders sat in stunned silence. The idea of deliberately sacrificing ships and crews was alien to their way of thinking. Council military doctrine emphasized preserving forces, finding diplomatic solutions, minimizing casualties on all sides. This is not warfare, whispered Counselor Thrinak. This is ... something else. Yes, General Lee agreed. This is survival. The Devourers do not think like you. They do not value individual lives or preserve their forces for future battles. They consume everything they encounter and convert it into more of themselves. To defeat them, we must be willing to think differently than we have ever thought before. She looked around the room at the assembled alien commanders. The question is not whether you approve of our methods. The question is whether you trust us enough to let us save your civilizations. Outside the command ship, human vessels were already moving into position. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and humanity had spent 200 years making sure they would be ready for it. Admiral Kim Sung-ho stood on the bridge of the last light as Earth grew larger in the view screen ahead of them. The planet looked nothing like the blue and green world that humans had once called home. 2 centuries of secret preparation had transformed it into something that would have been unrecognizable to their ancestors. The continents were covered with massive metal structures that reached up through the atmosphere and disappeared into space. What had once been oceans were now geometric patterns of machinery that pulsed with barely contained energy. Even the moon had been hollowed out and converted into a weapons platform that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. All ships, report ready, announced Captain Yoon Demi from the communications station. Her voice was steady, but Kim could see the tension in her shoulders. They all knew what this day would cost. Behind them, the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled was approaching through space like a living storm. Their ships had grown larger and more complex as they consumed more worlds, learning and adapting with each victory. The central command vessel was the size of a small moon, its surface crawling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Shin Woo-jin from the sensor station. Enemy fleet will reach Earth's orbit in 6 hours. Kim nodded once. 6 hours to complete a plan that had taken 200 years to prepare. 6 hours to save a galaxy, or watch it die. He opened a communication channel to the entire human fleet. 10,000 ships floated in formation around Earth, their crews ready for what everyone knew would be the final battle. These were not the original colonists who had fled the galaxy centuries ago. These were their children and grandchildren, raised in the cold void between stars, trained from birth for this single moment. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim," he broadcast. "Today we complete the work our ancestors began. Today we prove that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our ships, but our willingness to sacrifice everything for those who cannot protect themselves." The response came from every ship in the fleet, 10,000 voices speaking as one, for the galaxy. The first phase of the plan began exactly as rehearsed. Human ships launched themselves at the approaching Devourer fleet in what appeared to be a desperate, disorganized attack. The alien observers watching from the safe zones beyond the galactic rim shook their heads sadly, believing they were witnessing humanity's final, futile gesture. But Colonel Park Tae-ho, commanding the lead attack squadron, knew better. Each suicide run was precisely calculated to draw the Devourers closer to Earth, while transmitting critical targeting data to the planet's hidden weapon systems. Every ship that died served a purpose in the larger pattern. The Devourers took the bait perfectly. Their massive fleet moved toward Earth, like a pack of hunters closing in on wounded prey. They had consumed hundreds of worlds, using the same tactics, and they saw no reason why this target should be any different. What they did not know was that Earth itself had become a weapon, deep beneath the planet's transformed surface. Admiral Lee Min-young monitored the approach from the Central Command bunker. Around her, thousands of technicians worked at stations that controlled the most powerful weapons ever built by any species in the galaxy. These were not energy weapons that the Devourers could absorb, but kinetic launchers that could accelerate projectiles to near light speed, using the planet's own gravitational field. "Target acquisition complete," reported Major Kim Ji-won from the firing control station. "All Devourer vessels are within optimal range." Lee looked at the tactical display, showing the enemy fleet positioned exactly where humanity needed them to be. 2 centuries of planning, 50 years of hit-and-run attacks to learn their patterns. Thousands of ships sacrificed to gather intelligence. It all came down to this moment. "Execute final protocol," she ordered quietly. What happened next lasted only 17 minutes, but it would be remembered as long as any species in the galaxy survived. The planet Earth revealed its true nature as weapons that had been charging for decades, unleashed their accumulated power. Kinetic projectiles traveling at impossible speeds tore through Devourer ships like they were made of paper. Nuclear mines that had been waiting in space for 200 years detonated in perfect sequence, creating a chain reaction that consumed the entire enemy fleet. The Devourer command ship, the ancient intelligence that had been consuming galaxies for millions of years, tried desperately to escape as it realized the trap it had fallen into. But Captain Song Haerin, commanding the last functional human battleship, made sure it would not leave Earth's orbit alive. The victory came at a cost that brought tears even to hardened military veterans. Of the 10,000 human ships that had participated in the battle, fewer than 300 survived. Earth itself was scarred beyond recognition, its surface cracked and burning from the weapons discharge. But the galaxy was free. In the weeks that followed, as rescue ships searched for survivors and the alien populations began returning from the safe zones, the truth became clear. Humanity had not disappeared in fear 2 centuries ago. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, withdrawing from civilization to become its guardians when the galaxy's darkest hour arrived. Admiral Park Soo-jin, now the senior surviving officer of the human fleet, stood before the reformed Galactic Council. As they offered humanity membership, trade agreements, and honors beyond counting. "We appreciate your gratitude," she said simply. "But our work is not finished. The galaxy is large, and there are other threats in the dark spaces between the stars. We will be out there, watching, preparing for whatever comes next. As the surviving human ships disappeared back into the void, the galaxy understood that it now had protectors who asked for nothing in return, except the knowledge that civilization would continue. Somewhere in the darkness, humanity was watching and waiting, ready to pay any price to keep the light of civilization burning.